Hello and welcome to Movie Mayhem. Today we're going to talk about John Woo's 1989 masterpiece, The Killer. We did Better Tomorrow, which is kind of leading up to, this film in terms of his progression as a storyteller and a filmmaker. This, it's very critical to understand the timing of this film when it came out, especially if you see stuff like Tarantino's, early '90s output, and especially his writing of like True Romance and the homage paid in there. The Killer is a basic story of a hitman who has to, he gets his hit, accidentally injures a woman, and feels guilty for it, wants to take care of her. There's a relationship built there, and he goes on his last hit to escape, get out, and be with her. What it also does on a different level is it really explores friendship and how friendship builds, how friendship can exist, how the polar opposites of characters can mesh, and how people can transform through various events. Stars Chow Yun-fat, and Danny Lee and Sally Yet is the girl, the girl that gets blinded. There are at least 3 versions of this film. I recommend the original director's cut of it, which is on the Criterion as well as a couple other places. And it's 111 minutes. There's a 124-minute version, which is extended. That is not John Woo's cut. That was just added. It might have been Tsui Hark who added it, whatever. But it's just extra scenes, and it kind of slows down the pacing. Woo cut it to forward pacing, and I agree with him. Honestly, watching both versions, there is a butchered version. It's like 102 minutes. Don't get that crap. This is another one, too, where I'm going to recommend not getting a dub. I found the dubbing, I don't like it on this film. It's very, the acting is very serious, very dramatic, and I think it takes away a lot of it. There are multiple subtitles as well. There's one where they're Dumbo, Mickey Mouse, one where they're like Beavis and Butthead. Another one's they're just Abe and Ase, something like that. It doesn't really matter. Most of the subtitles are the same, just kind of what Chow Yun-fat and Danny Lee call each other changes. But this was, to me, John Woo's epitome masterpiece of an action film. Overall drama, I would give a nod to Bullet in the Head. I think it's slightly better in just raw interpersonal drama, but The Killer has more of an action film-y. But this is what I would think action films could strive to be. And it also represents you had 5 more years before John Woo went to America, and you get something like, You Change to get Hard Target, Broken Arrow, Face Off, very different. Now you can see a lot of that original brilliance of John Woo in The Killer. The boat chase scene, of course, from Face Off, that's what he wanted to do in The Killer, but budget constraints prevented him, so it's much shorter. But in a way, I feel the budget constraints help his creativity in The Killer. This one, so it opens up the first action scene with Chow Yun-fat coming and just blasting away at people. One, it's super violent, brutal, tons of squibs going off everywhere, and it's just not something you see. It isn't. You still don't see it. And in 1989, or I think I got the film around 1991, I found a copy of it. Nothing. I was blown away by this film. The Killer was the first. Well, I'd seen Hand of Death, but I didn't realize that was John Woo. So The Killer was the first official John Woo film I saw, and I was like, what is happening? I mean, you've got, John Woo has always said that reloading is boring to watch. I agree with him. I can't argue with that. And the fact that he keeps it consistent, I'm like, okay, fine. Everybody's got a million bullets, and it looks cool. He abuses slow-mo, very much Peckinpah-esque, and I think Peckinpah was a little bit better at the slow-mo. But it works in the context of what he's doing. Now, one thing he does interesting in The Killer is these weird freeze frames on their faces to capture the emotion, and you can almost say it looks cheap, but in a way, it adds kind of to the emotion, because his story he's telling isn't so much the love story of Chow Yun-fat and Sally Yee, but rather the brotherhood bonding between Chow Yun-fat and Danny Lee. And I've always found that very interesting. You can tell, John Woo obviously is deriving from some kind of history with either a brother or a very good friend. But really, the way their relationship grows, and by the end of the film, it works on a very emotional level. And I think this is another good introductory film for Hong Kong cinema. If you're wanting to show someone who hasn't seen something, I think this is a very good film that the action scenes are still ridiculous. Like the last shootout in the churches, where they ran out of squibs, obviously, but they didn't run out of stuntmen, so they could kill 100 people. But again, it's over the top enough that I think it'll be interesting to someone who hasn't seen this. But at the same time, it's got a very strong story with a lot of emotion. It's got your romance still in there. It's got the very well delivered drama that will capture someone's attention that maybe doesn't want to watch a standard action movie. More so than like a Hard Boiled, which is pretty much just raw action. Like this has that real tender emotion. And it goes through a lot of steps where of betrayal. Chow Yun-fat is betrayed, and then his friend, comes back wanting redemption and does things to redeem himself in his friend's eyes to rebuild that trust and love. And there's a lot of mirrored symbolism throughout that story and what people will do for each other, for friendship, for love, how far they'll go. Those of you that don't know, it's a very sad ending. And in a way, I have to say, I think it needed it because it kind of drives it home more, almost to say like, look, you don't know how long you're going to have someone or how long they'll be there for you. So do what's right today. Do right by them today. Get their forgiveness, get their love. So I think it's a beautiful film. Music fits it very nicely, very John Woo, going back to his blues-esque soundtracks. I think it really fits the tone of the film nicely. One thing interesting is, good luck finding a nice print. And this is something that really plagues Hong Kong films as a whole. The prints are kind of garbage, and there are no good ones to find. Nobody seems to have any, which is kind of a bummer because these are amazing films and stuff we're never going to get again. You have some homages like, what Tarantino did, but even John Woo himself, Escape Me, the film he made a couple years ago. No, it's just not, doesn't capture that energy. You're seeing these stars in their prime, John Woo in his prime. And again, he'd had tons of films under his belt by this time. So he was a veteran filmmaker, and he really shows that and shows what he can do with a very low budget. So that's pretty much, that's the acting art aspect of the film. Top notch. I mean, of course, we got our doves and the slow-mo and lots of candles, which John was famous for. But it works. It works. That's, some people make fun of that, but that's what you do when you have no money. It's beautiful. It's pretty. It helps the scene, and it cost him $50. Not everybody has $200 million budgets, right? So I got to give him credit for that. He had a very good eye for that type of stuff. The action scenes, of course, the intro is fantastic. There's several shootouts actually that just go on and on with just the orchestration. When the guys attack Chow Yun-fat in the apartment and he does that kickback, with the chair and blasts him. That whole choreography of the gun fu genre is something that really sets this movie apart. Again, let's keep in mind, this is pretty new by this point. John Woo had already started it with A Better Tomorrow. You had stuff like City on Fire. I think School on Fire had come out. I'm not sure, but you had some other people like Ringo Lam doing it too. But John Woo invented it, and this was just taking it to that next level. Again, from the gun fu perspective, I think Hard Boiled that's the level, right? That is our ceiling of ridiculous amazingness of gun fu. But it's worth watching it for that too, because this is a rare instance where it's really blended well with story. Of course, there's nothing like watching the hundreds of guys in white suits charging the house, getting just mowed down. I wonder, like, how much do they pay the coroner in this world? Poor guy. Where do they put all these people? Even if you're incinerating them, that's a lot of dead bodies. I mean, they kill like 100-something people in that movie in the course of like 2 days. It's not, by far, not a small amount. And of course it all leads up to, if you probably seen or heard at least about the church scene at the end, where it's a buddy cop shootout video game Death Wish 2 style, because they just never stop coming, them passing guns back and forth, blah, 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 people flying back from every bullet shot. That over-the-top action kind of works. And in a way, I like that he took the first scene of action. It was very dark, very serious, very grim, and very bloody, and eased that. And it was, if you look, the very first scene compared to the last scene in the church, the last scene in the church is almost no blood. Very bright. Everyone's wearing brighter clothes. Candles everywhere, the white doves. And it kind of transforms that energy and works, because he hits you right in the beginning, right? Where, okay, this is serious. She's been blinded by this and everything else. One thing I'll talk about is how Chow Yun-fat gets blinded at the end. It's like, how did that happen? Because if he was getting shot in the eye, he'd be dead. But he could have turned his head and it got grazed perfectly, which is the theory I go with. I was explaining this to someone else who's watching it. That was the only problem they had with the film. They're like, well, it doesn't make any sense. So I was like, well, he turned his head at the last second and the heat from the bullet blinded him, which theoretically could happen. Is it likely? No, but theoretically. So a little bit of that. I mean, if we were to go through and abuse the film, I'm sure we could find things like that. But as a whole, this is a great movie. So if you haven't seen The Killer, absolutely watch The Killer, and please tell me what you thought about it. If you have seen, let me know what you think about it too. But those of you who haven't seen this, because nowadays, I surprisingly find a lot of people who haven't seen it. Hong Kong film is not really thought of much anymore since China kind of scrapped it. But anyway, that's The Killer. Again, another good positive thumbs up. Don't worry, we'll get to some crap movies soon. But please like, subscribe, check out Patreon, and we'll see you next time.